Hi, hi everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm Yuwen Zhao. Today our group is going to focus on the contemporary Japanese art and show how artists can present Japanese culture through their artworks. A definition to Japanese contemporary art is the art of today. More broadly includes the Japanese artwork produced during the late 20th century and the early 21st centuries. Jinyi and Grace are going to talk about the cute and cool in contemporary Chinese visual art, following by the Qing and Sijie will examine the socially engaged art in post-colonial Japan, an alternative view of contemporary Chinese art.
Hi guys, I'm Jinyi. I'd like to begin the first part of our presentation about cute and cool in contemporary Japanese visual arts with this picture. The picture was took when these three young female fashion icons were promoted to represent Japan as trend communicator of Japanese pop culture. They traveled the world and attracted thousands of fans around the world because of their sweetness and cuteness, which was identified as kawaii. Kawaii can be said to represent a dimension of contemporary aesthetic in Japanese culture, since it covers two dimensions of aesthetic, namely the artworks and artistic practice, and the sensory experience in everyday life. A number of recent art exhibitions in Japan have focused particularly on the stylings of cute and colorful expressions. However, the concept of kawaii in Japanese visual arts is not a recent phenomenon. According to Brogan, in the middle 1980s, there were many young female artists who used bright colors extensively which related to the formation of original kawaii. These artists use cute and chill-like as the key elements of their artwork to maintain a young lifestyle. Well, how do the contemporary art practice apply the aesthetic of kawaii from within? According to Frank in 2002, many artists in the 1990s operate with the notion of aesthetic, which is significant in the artwork by Minako Nishiyama, whose work is identified with an initial stage of the artistic transformation of postmodern Japanese cute culture. She likes to create with bright pink, referring to the cute image of young Japanese women. The first example of Minako's work is an installation work entitled Pink House. It's in pink color and Rococo style that show cute and sweet from Ghost comics. Here's another work created by Minako, which was a chubby cute little girl character named Rita Chan. I searched on the Amazon and found that there are more than 100 different kinds of Rita Chan dolls on sale. According to Shinban in 2007, sales of Rita Chan dolls over 53 million as of 2007. The Rita Chan dolls builds idealized girlhood dreams for people who owned the dolls and reflected the vogue of that time period.
So who exactly pioneered the visual and stylistic aspects of kawaii culture? And what gives rise to some of Japan's most famous kawaii characters that are known and loved throughout the world? Let's have a look into some of the artists who propagated Japanese cartoons into mainstream media and culture. Our first case study is a look into neopop artist Takashi Murakami. Murakami founded a cute and colorful expression which began to address kawaii culture as an artistic medium and discursive element in visual art Japan. The mass production nature of his work allowed Murakami's artistic DNA to spread across the world, which gave rise to kawaii as a form of popular culture. Takashi's Mr. Dub series, which can be seen down below, is comparable to Hello Kitty, Mickey Mouse, and Miffy. Mr. Dog became more of a brand mascot than a piece of art, as Takashi's intentions were so that the audience doesn't need the artist, only the character. Mr. Dob is a play on the Japanese slang phrase dobajite, or why, which reflects Murakami's dissenting view of consumer society as being lifeless and empty. The creation of Mr. Dob was also a test of market survivability, according to Murakami, and whether this would survive his legacy like other iconic cartoon characters. Our second case is Yoshitomo Nara. Yoshitomo Nara's work features a more neutral color palette, despite being influenced by Murakami's neo-pop themes of the contemporary world. Nara's work follows a distinctive expression of sweet yet sinister children with androgynous features. He challenges characteristically cute images by juxtaposing them with dark, frightening imagery. This can be seen as a critique or rejection of Japan's strict social conventions. Underneath the popular appeal of his artwork, Nara uses these innocent characters to overlay darker emotions of loneliness in a rigid society, rage, fear, and helplessness. On the right here, we have Nara's famous piece called Knife Behind Back, which features a sexually ambiguous child involved in a situation of predicament and solitude. The knife behind her back is hidden, which makes its threat infinitely more ominous. This concept underscores the associated radical potential of the insignificant, the innocent, the fictionary, and the imagined. Nara offers a different perspective of kawaii culture, not one of mass production and globalized influence, like Murakami, but rather artwork that offers audiences a poignant reminder of society, rebellion, and passive defiance. So what makes kawaii culture appeal to so many, and why is it so popular? In the eyes of the Japanese, kawaii has been known to be muko kuseki, meaning that it is a cultural product that lacks nationality and implies an erasure of racial and ethnic characteristics. The term has been popularized by sociologist Koichi Iwabachi and has been a trend amongst manga and anime artistic mediums, where most artists have modeled their works based on Caucasian stereotypes. Let's take a look at Miyazaki's film Howl's Moving Castle, which we can see on the right here. The popularity of Ghibli films from international audiences have shown that Western audiences have come to appreciate a, quote, an animated, raceless, cultureless virtual version of Japan. Iwabachi argues that by lacking any cultural odor, global audiences are more likely to appreciate art and relate to it as a form of realism. This also aligns with the phenomenon of globalization, which is an attempt for artists and companies to create standardized global markets, while at the same time being sensitive to local markets and differentiated consumer segments. This is an incredibly easy way to appeal to the masses and accommodate to the different tastes and preferences across the world.
Hi everyone, my name is Qing and I will be addressing the socially engaged art with Sijie. Topics like kawaii shows the asceticism, which is the dominant version of Japanese art. However, there are also some more oppressive topics. The term socially engaged art is a recent category. In brief, the artist aims to provoke ideas, inspire debates through the co-create work with specific audience, thereby create socially or political changes. Japan invaded other Asian countries as colonizers since the late 19th century until the Second World War. After the unconditional surrender, Japan was controlled and protected by the US for years. Therefore, the country did not put sufficient effort in improving the relations with the ex-colonies. This led to the complex post-colonial status of Japan, and the unresolved issues during the war has resurfaced since the 1990s and followed by related artworks. The term Zainichi refers to Korean in Japan. During the colonial period, the Korean people become part of the nation of the Empire of Japan, and many Koreans migrate to Japan. They are often objects of discriminations. Zainichi series by Takamine Tadasu consists of 3 artworks. The first work, called A Lover from Japan. It's an installation located in the mining site of Kyoto. It reveals that many Koreans were brought to Japan and forced to work and exploited in the mine. After the Second World War, the Zainichi still faced many employment discrimination for many years. The Second World Korean study was made in collaboration with Korean teachers. Takamine studied Korean traditional cultures like the calligraphy and pottery making to create this work, thereby shows the communication of cultures between countries. The final work of this series is The Baby in Sadong. It is a set of photos from the wedding ceremony of the artist and his Zainichi wife in Insadong, which is a place in Korea. The artwork has Japanese, Korean, and English texts on it. It is proposing a flexible and open ideas of identity without nationality. During the Second World War, women from various countries are forced into sexual labors for Japanese troops. These women are called the comfort women. Shimada Yoshiko addressed the comfort woman issue in her feminist angle. Her work includes the Aichi piece, A House of Comfort, which is shown in the beginning of my presentation, and a performance called Becoming a Statue for Japanese Comfort Woman. In the performance, she was wearing Japanese kimono and painting a skin broods. The performance is in the front of the Embassy of Japan in Seoul, and she also do it in the Yatsukuni Shrine, which is a very controversial place because many war criminals are enshrined here. During the performance, she put a tape on her mouth to indicate the victims are forced into deep silence. Both Takamine and Shimada's work reminds the society that there are still unsolved historical issues between Japan and other Asian countries.
Besides the issues that are caused by Japan as a colonist, the socially engaged art also illustrated the problems from Japan as a colony. Okinawa, the smallest and least populated of 5 main islands of Japan. However, it becomes a keystone inertia for the US Cold War, which is a big sacrifice from residents on the island. Immature Chicago, she's a video artist, born and raised in the post-war period, and I will go through one of her famous films, I Like Okinawa Sweet. These two pictures are famous scenes from I Like Okinawa Sweet. We can see that Immature is eating the iconic ice cream of Okinawa with enjoyable look in front of the US military base. And in the video, after she licking the first ice cream, she is racing in the hot sun, drenched in sweat until someone gives her another one. Then she races to finish the quick melting scoops without the burning sensation and the hot sun. When the third ice cream is given to her, this incident consumption morphs into a nasty display of sickness and over-indulgence. And for decades, Japanese government has offered residents large financial incentives to lease their land for American military expansion, and force them with surgery if they are refused. In addition, the ice cream is from the brand called Blue Seal, which initially opened a factory in Okinawa to fill appetites of the US Army in the 1948. In the 1970s, Blue Seal began to sell the dessert to local Okinawan with uniquely local flavor. Moreover, it became a symbolic product that tourists and locals are bound to consume. And before I introduce the artwork, what was everyone's impression of the island? So let's go in detail with history. After World War II, Okinawa became and Japan signed the Treaty of Peace in 1951. Okinawa became a territory of the US, and despite this, Japan still held the residual sovereignty over Okinawa, causing Okinawans to be considered neither US nor Japanese citizens. Until 1972, Okinawa rejoined Japan. Okinawans could finally travel to Japan mainland, raise the Japanese flag, But what is ridiculous is Japanese is always the language used in daily life. And now, let's have a look at statistical data. The military base became more and more even after 1972. And accidents, criminal arrests, also the noise and environmental issue all come with that. And interestingly, the economic is not coming together with US military base. So a little conclusion, what am I sure want Okinawa and the people all over the world is now to forget what happened and to think, no matter how many lives you ruin, is that just for red, white, and blue? For instance, if you keep eating ice cream, diabetes will also come for you. So I hope everyone can have their own power, but no one should abuse power. At one day you may lose the power.
In summary, Jinyi and Grace provide description to indicate that the kawaii plays an essential role in contemporary Japanese art and show that how kawaii culture has been developed since the mid-1980s. What's more, several artworks about kawaii in Japan are discussed by Jinyi and Grace from various perspectives, including negative and positive effects brought by the kawaii culture. In global context, the term kawaii has become a specific sign of Japanese culture. To be critically, the difference of kawaii-related concepts between Japan and other countries should be noticeable. Villa in 2019 explained this idea that, while many countries around the world have patriarchal societies, Japan is often cited as a primary example. Therefore, in such patriarchal society, Japanese females are required to be sweet, cute, pale, innocent, and weak, so that they can let men feel protective. Just look at the popularity of bands like AKB48. Various Western countries which have higher gender equity and females are more open-minded show some negative responses to Japanese kawaii culture. Yomanda wrote an experience that he was warned not to use the word cute to a female. One editor of a magazine told him that the use of cute to a female may be regarded as a discrimination from the viewpoint of political correctness. In other words, cuteness is valuable only for children in some countries. So it could be concluded that if someone asks me, do you want to be called kawaii? I would like to say no, because self-confidence, courage, and independence are more important and valuable than the cuteness or paleness for me. Qing and Sijie explain that several contemporary Japanese art point out issues after the Second World War. The aim is to remind everyone not to forget people's sacrifices due to the past war. Also, we should pay greater attention to the concern about post-colonialism and Occidentalism. One of the most famous books focusing on post-colonialism is The Orientalist series written by Edward Said at the end of the 20th century. This book has raised intense discussion among scholars from the East and the West. In an era when Western countries, especially Europe, control the greatest threat, everything that is different from Europe at that time will be considered as the East. Western scholars always carry a cultural prejudice when studying the Eastern countries. The reason for this phenomenon can be explained as a universal maxim. When people contacting with a new foreign culture, they will automatically compare their existing knowledge framework with the new foreign culture. The original knowledge serves as a foundation for understanding the foreign culture. The deeper the domestic culture in a person's mind, the more mystic the understanding of a foreign culture. From this, it can be seen that it also reminds us to maintain a more tolerant attitude and open mind when trying to know the culture for different countries in the future, and not to judge easily without comprehensive understanding. Now we want to have an active discussion with you. So the first question is that do you or anyone around you like Japanese kawaii styles such as cosplay, Lolita, and anime? And please briefly explain why they are interested. Can you think of other examples of the unresolved historical issues that form the post-colonial status of Japan? Do you feel a little part of a group to sacrifice who thinks is okay for achieving a big goal of the whole group? Can be Okinawa, Japan, and the US, and also can be your own teamwork experience before. There is a reference part for Greece. Jinyi, Qing, and me. So that's all of our presentation. Thank you for listening.